Woody Strode once faced fascists, walked across the battlefields of World War II, and stood eye to eye with the most powerful men in Hollywood. But the fiercest battle of this legend was not fought on the battlefield or in front of the camera. It came from people and forces that constantly tested Woody's patience, dignity, and limits of endurance. A dictator once exploited Woody's image for propaganda. Stars who could not accept being overshadowed by a black man in a system that was always trying to crush him. Woody Strode was not someone who easily hated others. He stayed silent and he kept moving forward. This is not a story about a personal feud. This is the story of the barriers Woody faced throughout his entire life. Adolf Hitler, a historical and ideological contrast. In 1936, the world turned its eyes to Berlin. Hitler wanted to transform that year's Olympics into a massive stage to prove the superiority of the Aryan race. But in a bitter irony, the perfect physical model that artists under Hitler's command searched for to symbolize physical power was not found in Germany. They found it in a young man from California, Woody Strode. At that time, Woody was a physical marvel at UCLA. He was a star in both track and field and football with powerful muscles and body proportions as precise as those of ancient Greek statues. Nazi photographers and artists photographed and sketched his physique. They used the image of a black man with Native American heritage as the template for propaganda paintings depicting idealized Aryan muscular strength. This created a terrifying ideological contradiction. Hitler hated people of color, viewing them as inferior beings. Unmentioned yet, he was captivated by the physical beauty of Woody Strode to the point of allowing it to be used as artistic reference material for the regime. For Woody, having his body turned into a tool was a psychological scar. He never accepted being admired by a monster. What makes this story especially striking lies in Woody Strode himself. He was a man of African descent and Native American blood Crowfoot Cherokee. These were communities that Nazi ideology did not recognize as equal, and even considered incompatible with their racial worldview. The man Hitler admired would have been the man Hitler despised. This line captures the full drama of this relationship. Hitler admired the shell, the strength, muscles, and endurance of Woody. But if Woody had stepped into his office, he would have been sent to a concentration camp immediately. Woody Strode hated that hypocrisy more than anything. But Woody did not choose to argue with words. When World War II broke out, he joined the United States Marine Corps Air Wing. Instead of sitting in studios as a model, he chose to carry a weapon and head into the Pacific battlefield. Woody's hatred for Hitler and fascist ideology was not written in headlines. It was carried in every step he took over fallen enemies. He used the very body they once praised as perfect as a weapon to destroy the empire that gave birth to that prejudice, the photograph at the Olympics. Even though Woody did not compete in Berlin 1936 after being narrowly eliminated during the US trials, his image arrived in Berlin before the athletes themselves. Sketches of his musculature were displayed in Nazi armies as lessons in perfect anatomy. Woody Strode knew this, and for the rest of his life he lived with an intense sense of self-respect to prove one thing. This body belonged to a free man, not a tool for any totalitarian ideology. This was a confrontation between an iron god and a devil. Woody never needed to say a single word to Hitler because his very existence and success were the most painful slap to Nazi racial doctrine. If Adolf Hitler was an enemy of human dignity on a global scale, then the next enemy was one of the souls standing inside the very temple of cinema. In Woody's eyes, this man was not a savior who gave him opportunity, but a modern-day plantation owner, hiding behind the title of Hollywood's greatest director. Cecil B. Deal, Hollywood Power and Invisible Limits. Cecil B. Deal was one of the most powerful figures of early Hollywood. He was regarded as the master of epic cinema, grand in scale, rigid in discipline, and controlled down to the smallest detail. To DeMille, filmmaking was not just art, but a place where everyone on set had a predetermined position. Woody Strode entered that world with one very clear advantage: his physique and strength. He was tall and solid, carrying the presence of an ancient warrior, something Deal especially favored in his historical spectacles. But from that point on, the limits of their relationship began to reveal themselves. In the epic The Ten Commandments, 1956, Deal cast Woody Strode as the king of Ethiopia. It was a visually important role. Strode appeared striking and commanding, standing amid massive sets and hundreds of extras. However, the role had almost no dialogue. The character existed primarily as a visual symbol, powerful, silent, with no inner life explored. This was not accidental. In Hollywood cinema of the 1950s, especially in epic films, black characters were often used to add historical depth to the setting to emphasize power and contrast, but they were rarely given a personal voice. Woody Strode understood this clearly. He was paid a high salary, around $500 per week during filming, a significant sum at the time. As a result, Strode became one of the highest-paid black actors in Hollywood. But at the same time, he realized a harsher truth. Money did not equal artistic recognition. Thiel was willing to pay for Strode's body for his presence in the frame, but he was not willing to let his character drive the story, express thought, or develop as a complete human being. On Thiel's sets, Woody had to endure a militaristic atmosphere. Thiel ran his productions like an emperor. He controlled actors through strict discipline, rarely allowing discussion or creative challenge, especially from supporting actors. Woody, with the blood of a warrior in him, felt deeply insulted by the way Thiel treated supporting actors and people of color as pieces on his chessboard. Woody Strode once came to a bitter realization. In Hitler's Germany, his body was used for propaganda. In Day's Hollywood, his body was used to make money, but both refused to acknowledge the existence of his soul. Thiel created massive worlds, but in those worlds there was no place for a black man to speak as a gentleman. Cecil B. Thiel was a man who oppressed through reputation. He did not use a whip. He used contracts and stage lights to turn a living legend into a silent ghost. In the shadows of Western film sets, there was a silent war that needed no script. It was a battle between two dominant males, two true alpha figures where the glory of one became a scar on the pride of the other. Burt Lancaster, The Battle of Muscle Gods on the set of The Professionals, 1966. By the mid-1960s, Burt Lancaster was no lightweight. He was the ultimate symbol of masculine power in Hollywood during the 1960s. A former acrobat with a body of cold steel and an ego large enough to block out the sun, Lancaster always wanted to be the strongest, the fastest, and the most dominant man in every frame. And then he met Woody Strode on the set of The Professionals, 1966. When The Professionals, 1966 entered production, Lancaster was one of the four main stars alongside Lee Marvin, Robert Ryan, and Woody Strode. Among them, Strode received the least promotion, yet he possessed the most formidable physical foundation. He was a former track and field athlete who had played professional football, served in the military, and spent years training in disciplines that demanded real-world endurance and strength. Lancaster, with the competitive nature of a man who had always stood at the top, could not accept the presence of another man, especially a black man whose strength and stamina clearly surpassed his own. According to those who were on set, there existed a silent physical rivalry between Lancaster and Strode, not through arguments or open conflict, but through everyday challenges. During filming, Lancaster frequently threw himself into physically demanding activities, climbing horseback, riding heavy action scenes, often turning them into unofficial contests. The outcome was always the same. Woody Strode effortlessly crushed every challenge Lancaster put forward. Each time Lancaster tried to prove himself, Woody would casually, whether intentionally or not, reveal the vast gap in physical class between them. The difference lay in their foundations. Lancaster was an actor who trained hard and had excellent fitness. Strode was a true athlete accustomed to prolonged and brutal physical pressure. Those present on set described Lancaster as falling into a state of despondence, a mix of despair and wounded pride, for a man who treated strength as a religion. Being so completely outmatched by Woody was a devastating blow to his personal identity. The relationship was not built on cheap verbal hostility. It was a thick, unspoken masculine tension, an alpha tension that filled the air. In American society at the time, Lancaster represented the absolute power of the white male, but in front of Woody Strode, that power became fragile. Woody did not need to compete for star status. He only needed to stand there, and his presence alone pushed Lancaster into second place. Woody Strode understood Lancaster's jealousy very clearly. He did not mock him. He simply moved forward with the cold composure of a warrior who had survived real battles. That silence and dignified bearing only drove Lancaster deeper into helpless frustration. Burt wanted to be the strongest man in the world until he met Woody. That day, Burt's beliefs shattered. Burt Lancaster was the adversary of identity itself, a battle without bloodshed. Yet, One man walked away with a soul scarred by the realization that he was no longer the only beast in the jungle. The next enemy was an enemy of dignity. A brutal, silent war between two ideologies, two models of what a black man could be. A battle in which Hollywood used him as a sharp blade to sever Woody Strode's path forward. Sidney Poitier, the chosen one instead of Woody Strode. By the late 1950s and throughout the 1960s, Hollywood faced a major dilemma. The civil rights movement was spreading across the United States, forcing the film industry to confront a question it had avoided for decades. How would black people appear on screen? The answer was that Hollywood needed a black symbol to soothe the civil rights movement. Yet it was terrified of an eruption it could not control, and that was when the collision between two images began. Woody was a threatening presence. With rippling muscles, piercing eyes, and the blood of a warrior, he represented strength, wildness, and something that could not be tamed. He was the black man that racial extremists feared encountering in a dark alley. In contrast, Poitier embodied elegance, intellect, and most importantly, safety. He spoke with a polished American accent, wore tailored suits, and always maintained a calm, composed demeanor. Poitier was the black man that white middle-class families were willing to invite to dinner. The drama lies here. Hollywood made a ruthless choice. They decided that there was room for only one kind of black man on screen, Poitier's roles in Lilies of the Field. Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, and in the heat of the night presented an image that white audiences could easily accept. When Sergeant Rutledge 1960 went into production, many major studios proposed Sidney Poitier for the lead role. John Ford's firm decision to cast Woody Strode was a rare exception. The film gave Strode one of the most layered roles of his career, but it also revealed a clear boundary. Roles like that were exceptions for Strode, not the standard. After that, Hollywood returned to its familiar choice. Poitier became the face of racial progress on screen, while Strode was gradually pushed back into roles centered on physicality with few lines and little inner space. From Woody Strode's perspective, this was not a rivalry with Poitier, but a recognition of a strategy. He understood that Poitier was being used as a shield, allowing Hollywood to avoid confronting the harsh reality of black strength and black anger. While Woody sweated and bled in roles as gladiators and chained slaves, Poitier was being polished in air-conditioned offices. Woody once felt betrayed by the very system that had cast him in the lead role of Sergeant Rutledge. He realized that no matter how powerful he was, Hollywood still preferred someone who was obedient and approachable over a giant who could crush barriers with raw physical strength. Between the two men lay a deep conceptual divide. Woody Strode represented history and origin, Native American roots, slavery, the marginalized athlete. Sidney Poitier represented the future and integration. They chose Sidney because he made them feel safe. They looked at me and they saw a revolution. Sidney Poitier was the opposite symbol. He was a mirror reflecting Hollywood's cowardice in its refusal to accept the true power of Woody Strode. This battle had no winner because in the end, both men were trapped inside molds created by white hands. But Sidney Poitier was not the only choice Hollywood placed on the scale. At the same time, there was another name considered suitable for the image of black men that the industry wanted to present to the world. Harry Belafonte, the king of Calypso and Hollywood's glass cage. In the 1950s, Harry Belafonte rose as a global phenomenon. His album Calypso 1956 made him the first black artist to sell more than 1 million copies. He had everything: a captivating voice, a sculpted, handsome face, and a charming, approachable presence. Hollywood saw Belafonte as a gold mine, a black man who could sell records, star in romantic films, and please white audiences without provoking any fear or discomfort. However, that acceptance was not complete freedom. Hollywood was willing to celebrate Harry Belafonte, but mostly within spaces that were sealed behind glass music and gently symbolic roles. When Belafonte attempted to expand his range, especially toward more complex characters with clear social conflict, he began to encounter hesitation from the studios. Belafonte recognized that limit early on. Unlike many artists of his time, he did not choose silence. From the late 1950s into the 1960s, Belafonte became increasingly outspoken in the civil rights movement, supporting Martin Luther King Jr. and using his fame and finances for social causes. That commitment made his relationship with Hollywood far more complicated. Although Woody and Belafonte never engaged in public fights or verbal attacks, Belafonte's existence at the peak of fame served as a bitter reminder to Woody of how the world had rejected him. while Belafonte stood beneath dazzling stage lights praised by newspapers as a symbol of charm, Woody Strode struggled in the dust of movie sets playing chained men or nameless warriors. Woody understood this clearly. He did not lose to Belafonte in talent. He lost in a game whose rules were written by those who wanted black men to exist only as pleasant ornaments. Hollywood loved Harry's voice, but they feared my strength. They chose comfort over truth. Harry Belafonte was the velvet barrier. He unintentionally became the standard Hollywood used to exclude men like Woody Strode, men who were too real to be packaged into an industrial entertainment product. John Wayne injustice normalized on screen. In the history of American cinema, John Wayne is an almost unshakable icon. He was constructed as the King of the West, the embodiment of justice, masculinity, and the American spirit on screen for decades. Wayne's roles consistently placed him at the center of history, the man who made the final decision, the one who carried the fate of the community on his shoulders. Woody Strode appeared alongside John Wayne in multiple films, especially in works directed by John Ford. Off-screen, the two were not enemies. By many accounts, they had a friendly relationship and were even known to drink together. Wayne was not recorded as someone who treated Strode with personal hostility, but their relationship becomes significant not because of their private lives, but because of what unfolded on screen and how Hollywood chose to remember it in The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. Woody Strode played Pompey, the loyal helper to Tom Doniphan portrayed by John Wayne. Pompey was not the central character, yet he held a crucial moral and physical role in the story. There is one iconic scene. Wayne's character falls into drunken despair, trapped inside a burning house. It is Pompey, played by Woody Strode, who runs into the flames and physically carries Wayne on his back to save his life. Narratively, the moment is unmistakable. A black man saves the life of a white hero, not through words, but through action and sacrifice. Yet, within the familiar structure of Hollywood at the time, the meaning of that act is quickly reversed. The emotional focus of the film remains on John Wayne's character, his collapse, his redemption, and his legacy. Pompey, despite performing the decisive action, is still kept in the role of the supporting figure, not the one who defines the story. This reflects a deeply common pattern in 20th century American cinema. Black characters were often assigned roles of sacrifice, support, and rescue, but were rarely placed at the center of collective memory. Woody Strode understood this imbalance very clearly. He did not deny John Wayne's talent or status. What troubled him was this reality. The system always needed a Pompey, but it never allowed Pompey to step out of the hero's shadow. The injustice here did not come from a specific action by John Wayne, but from the way Hollywood chose to tell the story. Wayne continued to be celebrated as an eternal symbol of American heroism, while characters like Pompey and actors like Woody Strode were gradually pushed to the margins of cultural memory. Woody Strode played many roles in which he bore the danger and carried out decisive actions, yet was never given the authority to define victory. In Liberty Valance, he saved Wayne on screen. But in real life, Hollywood never gave him the chance to save his own career through fully realized heroic roles with equal voice and depth. For that reason, John Wayne in this story is not a personal adversary of Woody Strode. He is a massive shadow, a shadow under which the sacrifices of others become invisible. And it is that substitution, not the man John Wayne himself, that gives this relationship its heavy historical meaning. So if we must answer the question, who did Woody Strode truly hate the most? The answer is not a specific individual, not Hitler, not Cecil B. DeMille, not Burt Lancaster, Sidney Poitier, or John Wayne. The true enemy of Woody Strode was a system, an invisible machine that operated with precision coldness and deep-rooted prejudice. The Hollywood system? The enemy with no face. For more than 4 decades in film, Woody Strode was never given a romantic lead in a major Hollywood production. He was not allowed to be a man with a romantic life, not allowed to love, and not allowed to be loved by audiences in the way cinema routinely granted white stars of his era. This was not an accidental omission. It was a systemic choice. Hollywood at the time was not ready for American audiences to see a black man as the center of desire romance or the ideal nuclear family. Excluding Woody Strode from these roles required no public declaration. It happened quietly through the simple act of never writing such roles for him. In 1960, Sergeant Rutledge offered Woody Strode a rare role, a leading character with dialogue in her life and dignity. His character was a black soldier falsely accused of a serious crime, forced to defend his honor before a justice system riddled with prejudice. The film was praised artistically and considered progressive for its time. But what matters most is what did not happen afterward. After Sergeant Ritlit, there was no wave of similar roles for Woody Strode. No studio continued to build him as a leading man. No series of films explored his psychological depth. That role existed as a dangerous exception, not a new direction. Hollywood allowed one experiment, then quickly returned to its safe template. Across major films such as Spartacus, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, and The Professionals, Woody Strode consistently performed decisive actions, fighting, sacrificing, saving others. But he was never the one who made the final decision of the story. In Spartacus, the death of Draua ignites the rebellion. Yet the center of tragedy and glory still belongs to Spartacus. In Liberty, Valance Strode carries John Wayne out of a burning house. But the film's emotional weight revolves around Wayne's collapse and legacy. In The Professionals, he is one of 4 main characters, yet the only one not promoted on the poster. Hollywood repeated the same structure again and again. Black characters act. White characters are given the story. Exclusion in promotion and fame. Woody Strode's removal from promotional strategy was not a minor detail. In Hollywood's star economy, posters, trailers, and billing order determine who is remembered. The Professionals is the clearest example. 4 characters, 4 crucial roles, yet only 3 names were sold to the public. Hollywood was willing to use Woody Strode's power on screen, but not willing to sell him as a star. This ensured that he always remained in the state of being necessary, but never central. Looking back at Woody Strode's filmography, a clear pattern emerges. Warrior, gladiator, slave servant, native figure, a character positioned at the edge of civilization. There were almost no intellectual roles, no civil leadership roles, no characters allowed to articulate ideas. Hollywood never said he was not intelligent. They simply never wrote intelligent roles for him. That was the most effective form of rejection. No prohibition, just no options. Leaving America and the escape, Woody Strode's departure to Europe was not a journey in search of glory. It was a political migration of the soul. When Woody set foot in Italy in the late 1960s, he carried more than luggage. He carried the accumulated rage of 2 decades spent confined within the false glow of Los Angeles. The rise of spaghetti westerns in Italy opened a narrow crack. Woody was not searching for an opportunity. He was searching for humanity. In Italy, especially in films such as Black Jesus, Seduto alla Sudestra, 1968, Woody was finally allowed to play a character inspired by Patrice Lumumba. For the first time, he was not a servant or a gladiator. He was a thinker, a martyr, a man with pain, and a moral system of his own. In Hollywood, Woody was either black or white in symbolic meaning. In Italy, directors like Valerio Zerlini and Sergio Leone allowed him to be gray, complex, contradictory, and deeply human. In Europe, no one cared whether Woody had once saved John Wayne or been a visual tool for Dale. They saw only an actor with an overwhelming presence. The most valuable detail of this escape was dialogue. In Hollywood, Woody was often stripped of lines to become the silent giant. In Italy, he was allowed to speak. He was allowed to express intelligence through language. Being given dialogue was not merely a technical acting matter. It was an acknowledgement that his character had a mind, a plan, and the right to be heard. The Hollywood studio system believed it had eliminated Woody by pushing him into a corner, but by leaving Woody delivered his most devastating counterstrike, he proved that he could shine brilliantly without Hollywood's protection. When Woody returned to the United States years later, he was no longer an actor begging for roles. He had become an international legend, a man who broke his chains by stepping beyond the boundaries of a single nation. In America, I am a black actor. In Europe, I am simply an actor. This statement by Woody Strode stands as the sharpest indictment of the system he truly despised. Woody Strode did not lose to any individual. He lived within a system not wide enough to contain a man like him. He did not need pity. He needed to be seen clearly. And perhaps the most painful truth is not that Hollywood rejected him, but that history has nearly forgotten the man who once stood at its very center. If you believe Woody Strode deserves to be remembered more, leave a comment below. Do you see him as a warrior, an artist, or a forgotten symbol? If you found value in this story, don't forget to hit like to help the video reach more people, and subscribe to the channel if you want to keep exploring the stories behind Hollywood. and the people who are pushed into the shadows. See you in the next videos. All data analyses and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast. There is still so much more to explore. Stories of resilience, legacy, and truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on your